What's going on, everyone? So exactly 1 year ago, I sat in front of this camera and I told you that the next 12 months were going to change everything for me. I said it was going to be one of the biggest years of my life and that nothing was ever going to be the same again. Well, here we are 1 year later, and I need to tell you something. I really did say that, and I meant it. But what I didn't tell you is the whole truth of why I said it. Today, I want to sit down with you and finally be honest about something I've been dancing around for the last 12 months. Not because I wanted to lie to you. I never wanted to lie to you. But because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. And honestly, I wasn't even sure how it was going to end. Now I know. So I owe you the real story. If you've been here a while, you already know my journey. You know where I started. You know the struggles I went through to build this into what it is today. And if you don't, I'll link that story down in the description because I'm not going to rehash all of it here. But the short version is this. A little over a year ago, I hit a wall, not a small one. The kind of wall where you sit in your car in a parking lot and just stare straight ahead because you don't have the energy to walk inside. I had been running on fumes for years, stacking obligation on top of obligation, telling myself that if I could just push a little harder, everything would eventually feel lighter. It never did. It just got heavier. The secret I've been keeping, here's the part I never told you. Around that same time, I was quietly falling apart behind the scenes while everything on camera looked like it was going great. Views were up, comments were kind, the channel looked like it was thriving. But off camera, I was lying awake most nights, doing math in my head that never came out even. I was terrified that the thing I built my entire identity around was one bad month away from collapsing, and I was too proud and too scared to say that part out loud. So instead of telling you the truth, I gave you a version of the truth. I told you change was coming. I didn't tell you that the change was partly a last resort. I didn't tell you that behind the confident tone in my videos, there were entire weeks where I genuinely considered walking away from all of this and going back to something safe and boring and predictable, because safe and boring and predictable doesn't keep you up until 3 in the morning wondering if you made the biggest mistake of your life. I'm telling you this now, a year later, because I finally know how the story ends, at least this chapter of it. And I think you deserve the real version, not the polished one. What actually happened, so here's what I actually did, quietly, without making a big announcement about it. I made a decision that scared me more than anything I've ever done. I stopped treating this like a side project I was squeezing into the cracks of my life, and I went all in, completely. No safety net, no backup plan waiting in a drawer somewhere. I want to be honest, that sentence sounds a lot more heroic than it actually felt living through it. It didn't feel like courage. It felt like free falling and hoping something would catch me on the way down. I didn't tell you at the time because I genuinely didn't know if it was going to work. I've watched too many people online announce some bold leap of faith with total confidence, only to quietly go back to their old life a few months later with no follow-up video explaining what happened. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want to stand in front of you and promise you a transformation and then have to come back later and admit it fell apart. So I decided I would only tell you the full story once I actually had a full story to tell. Good or bad? Well, it's been a full year now. And I made it through. That doesn't mean it was easy. It means I survived it. And I think there's an important difference between those two things that nobody talks about enough. The best and worst year of my life here is the honest truth, and I want you to really sit with this, because I think it applies to a lot of you too, whatever you're going through right now. This has, without question, been the best year of my life. I have never felt closer to who I actually want to be. I have never been prouder of something I built with my own 2 hands and my own stubbornness. I have never looked forward to tomorrow the way I look forward to it now. And in the exact same breath, this has also been the hardest, most exhausting, most emotionally draining year of my entire life. There were nights I cried out of sheer relief and other nights I cried out of sheer terror, sometimes within the same 24 hours. I want to say that clearly because I think we've all been trained to believe that if something is good for you, it's supposed to feel good all the time. That's not true. Growth is rarely comfortable. The version of yourself that you're proud of on the other side of a hard year is usually built during the parts of that year you'd rather forget. 2 things can be true at once. You can be the most fulfilled you've ever been in your life while simultaneously being the most burnt out you've ever been in your life. Nobody warns you about that combination. I certainly wasn't warned. I had to learn it the hard way, in real time, with no instructions. Two things wrecked my plan, so here's where it gets a little more specific because I promised you honesty, not just vague inspirational talk. I had a plan going into this year, a tidy, sensible plan. I figured if I simplified my life in one area, freed up some time, and focused my energy in the right direction, things would naturally get easier. That plan lasted about 6 weeks before two things completely blew it up. The first thing was me, plain and simple. The moment I felt even a little bit of breathing room, instead of resting in it, I filled it right back up. I told myself I was just being productive, just being ambitious, just making the most of the opportunity in front of me. Looking back, I think a part of me didn't actually know how to sit still. I had spent so long defining my worth by how much I could grind through that the idea of slowing down felt more uncomfortable than the exhaustion did. So I took on more. I always take on more. I said yes to things I should have said no to. I set deadlines for myself that no reasonable person would have set for me, and I paid for it with my sleep, my patience, and honestly some of my relationships. The second thing was completely outside of my control, and if you create content of any kind, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. The platforms changed the rules on us. Not gradually either. Practically overnight, the way content gets shown to people got rearranged, and it hit people like me hard. What used to reliably reach an audience now gets buried unless you fight for every single view. The algorithms start favoring shorter, faster, more disposable content, and anyone putting real time and real care into something longer got squeezed. I watch creators I respect, people with audiences 10 times the size of mine, get a fraction of the reach they used to get, seemingly overnight through no fault of their own. So I had to adapt. I had to spend more hours than ever crafting things carefully, fighting harder for less guaranteed return, all while trying to hold on to the parts of what I do that actually matter to me and not just chase whatever trick keeps an algorithm happy this month. That's an exhausting way to work. It's exhausting to pour more effort into something and watch it get harder to be seen, not easier. I don't say that to complain. I say it because if you're going through the same thing in whatever you do, I want you to know you're not imagining it. And you're not doing anything wrong. The ground genuinely shifted under a lot of us this year. Where the good news comes in, but I promised you this wasn't just going to be a year of struggle, and it wasn't. There is real good news here, and I want to give it the same weight I gave the hard parts. First, the leap actually worked. Not perfectly, not without scars, but it worked. The thing I was terrified to admit I was risking everything on is still standing, and honestly, it's stronger than it's ever been. There's something deeply reassuring about proving to yourself that you can survive the thing you were most afraid of. Second, I learned where my actual limits are, which sounds like a small thing, but it isn't. For years, I operated like I had none. This year taught me, sometimes painfully, exactly where the edges are, and knowing where they are means I can finally start respecting them instead of blowing straight through them every single time. Third, and this one matters most to me, I stopped doing some of the things that weren't actually serving me just because I'd always done them out of habit or obligation. I cut things out of my routine that I thought I needed, but that were actually just quietly draining me for very little in return. That freed up space, real space, not the fake kind I used to promise myself and then immediately fill back up. I'm still learning how to protect that space, but I'm doing it, and a year ago I wasn't. The decision I still haven't made I want to close with something I know a lot of you have been asking me about, because you've picked up on hints here and there. There is a bigger decision still sitting out there in front of me, something I think about honestly every single day. I'm not ready to make it yet, and I want to be upfront about that instead of pretending I have it all figured out. Part of me wants to leap into it immediately. Part of me knows there are real practical reasons to wait. The people I love have roots exactly where we are right now. The cost of making that next move has gone up more than I expected, and the timing has to line up with more than just my own excitement about it. So I'm not going to stand here and give you a fake deadline just to sound decisive. What I will tell you is this. I'm not getting any younger, and there's a window where I still have the energy and the drive to actually do this thing the way I want to do it, with my own hands, on my own terms, not by handing it off to someone else to build for me. So there is a rough timeline in my head. I'm not going to hold myself to it publicly because plans like this deserve room to breathe, but it's coming. Maybe not, this year, probably not next year either. But it's coming, and when it does, you'll be the first to know, because you've been with me through every other version of this story. Why I'm telling you all this. I know this isn't the kind of video I normally make. I know most of you come here for something completely different, and I promise the next one will go right back to that. But I wanted to take this moment to be fully honest with you, because over the years you have genuinely become something like family to me. Not the kind of family you're born into, but the kind you choose, built on caring about the same things and showing up for each other again and again. I don't say that lightly, and I don't say it for views. I say it because it's true, and because you've earned the honest version of my story, not just the highlight reel. So thank you. Thank you for sticking with me through a video that wasn't your typical fun watch. Thank you for the comments, the shares, the support, and the patience while I quietly figured this out behind the scenes. None of what I've built would exist without you choosing again and again to show up. I don't take that for granted, not for one single day. If this meant something to you, do me a favor and hit that like button. Drop a comment and let me know if any part of this hit close to home for you, and if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because I promise there's a lot more good stuff on the way. Turn on notifications too, so you catch it the moment it goes up. I love you all. I mean that. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next